many Nigerians can wait till Friday, particularly because your plans, business, personal, official, travel, what have you, they probably won't be able to wait till Friday. In fact, Apeman had been reported to have said that this might take 2 weeks to be resolved. Yet again, I ask Nigerians by extension, what kind of business will wait for that long, knowing fully well that these businesses and individuals depend a lot on petrol? So we'll try to unpack all of these issues. Remember, one of the respondents there saying that the government needs to come out to tell Nigerians the truth about the situation. Again, the trust deficit we've always talked about seems to be getting wider and wider by the day. But these are the issues we'll take on. What exactly is going on? What truths do we need to get from government? Is there a way to speed up this recovery process? What is this logistics issue all about? These and many more will be taken up with our guests who will be joining us any moment from now from, well, virtual space, I shall say. We have joining us Mr. Olabode Showomi, the chairman, New Energies and Hydrogen Study Group of NGA. He's also a member of Experts on Gas, UNECE. Good morning, Mr. Showomi. Welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning. Good morning. It's always a pleasure to be on with you guys.
So you're speaking as a Nigerian, as an expert in the space as well. So it's a very good balance, you know. Speak to us about what you may have heard some people say about getting to know what the truth is about this situation. We've asked the questions, and it looks like the more you know, the more you need to know, or the more that is left unknown. So when you look at this space as an expert, because we can talk about bringing the product into the country, NNPCL does that, taking it to the depots, the private depots, then bringing them to all of the, you know, filling stations. So at what point do we have issues in this whole chain?
Okay, if we're to look at it technically, it's a supply chain issue, which simply means that the goods is not available to be distributed. Now, the reason why the goods may not be available for distribution could be multifactorial. And unless you are at the center of it, you may not know the exact reason. But if we are to look at historical trends, we do realize that anytime there's a need to force or precipitate price increase, we do see this kind of artificial scarcity or this kind of scarcity. Anytime there is a protest against government, we do see scarcity. So it is left to conclude that the supply chain gap, that is the gap between when the product is available to when it reaches the last mile, is where there is a problem. Now, when we look at it, and when we hear what the NNPC has to say, that we do have some amount of fuel available, and if that is true, that means the people who are responsible for the supply chain are the ones holding us captive. And if that is the case, speaking specifically to that, it does mean that even when the private refineries do go online, as Dangote is about to go on with petrol in a matter of weeks, it doesn't necessarily end it. So it basically means there has to be an alternative. And one of the alternatives that can be considered for that is actually pipelines, which is pipelines that will run across board. I mean, starting with the existing ones that have been vandalized and that has not been repaired. I mean, for example, there is a pipeline to the airport, which is supposed to supply Jet A1 fuel the airlines, and it has not been functional since the 90s. I mean, it can still function, and alternative just has to happen because it makes us a laughing stock to so many people. And I remember days ago, not even up to weeks now, I was in Addis Ababa, and I remember my host, the first thing he said is that, I hear that in your country that there is people selling fuel in jerry cans when the petrol stations are existing. I mean, I didn't know where that came from, so I really didn't have a response to that. But the point is that this is a supply chain issue. Whether the reason for that is because there is no fuel is one thing, but we do know that there are cases where there is fuel scarcity to the last man, even when there is fuel And bottom line is that somehow, some way, this has to end.
But more realistically, beyond the supply chain issue, Mr. Shomi, could this have anything to do with the increase in the price of crude oil in the international market and the implications for the petrol that we're importing? And of course, perhaps this debate about whether or not the federal government is still intervening with a measure of subsidy.
Well, it may be, it may not be, but to be honest, the point I'm trying to make is that there are separate issues, and those issues need to be separate. And we as Nigerians need to start interacting with each other as civilized people. In other words, if the people in the industry demand an increase in the retail price of petrol, the way to go about it is not to punish Nigerians. In other words, they need to sit at the table. And the fact that there is an increase, the fact that government is intervening is one thing. But the fact that anytime they feel uncomfortable, anytime they want a price increase, they have to put the nation as a standstill. It's not something to be encouraged. And that is just the point. Yes, there's an increase in crude oil price, but every increase in crude oil price should not mean an increase in fuel price. Because when there is a decrease in crude oil price, it doesn't necessarily mean to decrease in the retail price of petrol. So there are a lot of balancing act that needs to be done, and that is why the whole thing must begin and end on the negotiation table. So, and it does not mean that every time they're on the negotiation table, Nigerians must go cap in hand, people must suffer, people must fight, cars will be damaged, there will be accidents, work will suffer. You know, there are multiplier effects to these things. It's not necessarily the best way to engage Nigerians.
We are seeing from the visuals we get and driving around Lagos and parts of the country, we see these vehicles snaking into the roads and causing difficulties for everybody, motorists, commuters, and everybody literally. Looking into the future, we have 5 refineries now. I think just one is working. The other one, we hope it will work pretty soon because we've been having moving timelines as well. How do we militate against incidents like this? Because before we brought you on the show, I saw a video yesterday as far back as 1994. It's more like deja vu. Yet again, you know, it's happening in 2024, 30 years after.
So my point again is that there's a supply chain, and if for purpose of just reiterating it, it will be good to look at how that supply chain works. We start with upstream, where the crude oil is drilled, and the crude oil is drilled. Then it goes into tanks, midstream, where it's transported, and then it is processed in the midstream level and transported. And then, of course, it reaches the final mile, which is downstream proper, where the distribution takes place. Where the issue is at the moment is at the distribution, the final downstream level. It should be understood that if there is no fuel to be distributed, you will have this crisis. If there is fuel to be distributed and there is something wrong with the downstream distribution network, you will still have this crisis. What I am saying is that we have had many cases where there is actually fuel to be distributed, and because certain people want to have a strong hand in negotiation with government and with the people that are concerned, they provoke artificial. So my point is that if we want to stop this deja vu, as you put it, if we want a more respectable option for engaging Nigerians, the focus should be on the distribution chain and have them become responsible, social responsibility in terms of their actions, and responsible to Nigerians. Because you can have all the fuel in the world, but if the distribution chain has an issue, it will not work. And so we need people who are within the distribution chain to understand that there are better ways for them to get what they want than putting Nigerians to suffering. That is the point. So if the people are coming out to say they do not have fuel to distribute, it's a different case. But we are seeing that there's significant possibility that they do have fuel to distribute, and they just want to keep the fuel scarcity as a card for negotiation. And that is what should be discouraged.
Mr. Shomi, as for clarity, without ambiguity, so if I understand you and Nigerians understand you properly, this distribution point that could cause this difficulty that we're experiencing could either be technical or man-made. Are you saying by fact or in fact that this particular one is man-made?
Okay, so what I'm saying, because I'm not at the distribution point, is that there is significant possibility that it is man-made, because we have factors to hear that there is fuel available in the system. So unless I am at the point where I'm seeing it, I cannot say for a fact. But information available to me shows that there is significant possibilities that it is man.
So let's break it down further. Again, we're trying to get to the truth here, because they're different players, and it looks like every player would want to protect their interests, maybe give out a little information, protect the majority of it such that they protect their interests, which is their business. So the logistics issues and the pricing issue, which is it really? Is this also a push for price increase? Because each time you ask, the NNPCL had released a statement now 5 days ago saying there's no plan to increase the pricing. But you've referenced that there's a possibility for that, because we've seen that crude prices are changing. So it's either we're paying more as subsidy to meet that gap, or the cost would fall on Nigerians. So which do you think would need to be resolved now? Is it the conversation on pricing, or the conversation should be targeted to logistics or supply, whatever it is that it's been termed?
So there are two different issues. To my mind, the issue on pricing is a recurring decimal. Crude oil is a commodity like any other commodity in the world, whether it's gold, whether it's coffee, whether it's cocoa. They have up and downs. The prices goes up, the prices go down, which will mean that the pricing issue, we have to have a system that works for us, where we will need to engage each other and talk to each other anytime there's a need for price increase. Because the factors that affect pricing is not just crude oil. There could also be local issues. There are also things that are peculiarly Nigerians there. But irrespective of whichever one, as long as there is a need to engage for price, there has to be a respectable, intelligent, result-oriented way for us to discuss price. So that is on one side. On the other side, there is the system that is supposed to get us fuel. The point is this: whether the issue about pricing has been resolved or not, the system that gets us fuel to the filling station should not hold us accountable. In other words, it should not be a card. The suffering of Nigerians should not be a card for certain people to negotiate. And that is what needs to be decided. So what they do in the process, basically, is to appear to Nigerians to be discussing, or appear to Nigerians to have certain scarcity, and then be doing what they want to do. Yes, the NNPC has released a press release that there is no intention to increase price, but we do know historically, so this is a matter of observation, and observation is scientific. We do know by matter of observation that over the years, when there is this kind of scarcity, it usually leads to price increase. So whether they have said what they have said with tongue in cheek, whether they said it as a matter of fact and sincerity, we always know that when these kind of things happen, it does lead to certain things before normalcy resumes. So that is the point there. Two different issues, a different discussion about price, a different discussion about availability.
Speaking of normalcy, it is the expectation that perhaps in the coming days, or maybe very few weeks from now, Dangote Refinery will begin dispensing petrol. And in that regard, if we compare it with what we have experienced with the dispensing of diesel, there is an advocacy, even from here, by marketers of diesel, that a more realistic price for diesel would be even less than 1,200, where it is currently pegged now, because there is the company is not incurring cost on transportation, on haulage, and all the works. So what would be the realistic price? Because I doubt that it is too early in the day for Nigerians to begin to have that conversation. What would be the realistic price for the pump for petrol in the light of the circumstances? And should excessive profit, be a factor here? Which agency of government should we look to for regulation?
Okay, so under the Petroleum Industry Act, there is an agency of government responsible for regulation of downstream activities, and that's the Nigerian Midstream Downstream Regulatory Authority. They are in a position to say, and they are in a position to actually actually say as a matter of authority if the pricing is right. When we come to pricing of petroleum commodities, there are factors that go in there, some of which are peculiar to the company in terms of how the company operates, some of which are standard because petrol, the crude oil, is an international commodity. So it is a combination of the local cost, which is peculiar to how Dangote Refinery operates, and the ones that are international that determines their final price. I am a believer in the free market, the capital market, in which there should be limited interruptions in determining in somebody's price being determined. But having said that, because of the social nature and the social effect that petrol has, there has to be some kind of intervention there. The issue of determining whether the price is right or not is the fact that the factors that determine this price are not public. In other words, we do not know all the inputs that goes into it. And it's understandable because everybody that operates a business, whether it be a service business, whether it be a product business, has to have some amount of corporate secrecy, some amount of credibility for them to be able to operate business successfully. So it is the regulator really and sincerely that can be able to look into that price and say to Nigerians, this price is fair or this price is not. One of the things about Nigerians, we, the consuming public, when we talk about a fair price, whether it be with electricity, whether it be with petrol, is that we actually do not take time to look at the production costs. Today I heard the gentleman saying that everybody should live band A, and all that, but everybody is not talking about the cost of producing electricity. So it is when you know the cost that you can be able to put it side by side and know what should be a right price for them to sell it. So it's the same thing. We have to put some more pressure, a critical mass of pressure on the powers that be for them to release the factors that make for the pricing. And then, and only then, can we determine what is the ideal price for the people to produce. If the price is looking at 50% margins in terms of profit, obviously, because it is a social service and a social product available, then we can be looking at price reduce. But if it is not, they're looking at 5%, they're looking at 7%, somebody has to also put food on the table. So it's a balancing act, and it's an act for somebody who has not just information, but also authority to be able to look into and give Nigerians a feedback.
All right, Mr. Shobi, we're going to talk about that pricing policy in a moment. We're going to move from percentage to actual figure, but we want to touch base with our correspondent in Port Harcourt, the capital of Rivers State, Deborah Balama. She has an update for us. Deborah, we can see you at the fuel station. Give us an update. It doesn't appear like vehicles are snaking onto the road. What's going on?
Well, Geoffrey, in Port Harcourt, the scenario is quite different from what is being witnessed in Abuja and Lagos and other parts. As you can see behind me, people are buying fuel. There's even no queue in normal filling stations. You only have queue at NNPC filling station because they're selling for $5.91. in this particular filling station I'm standing, they are selling at 700 naira per liter. So actually, this might not be far from the fact that there are private tank farms in Port Harcourt and they all have products. I spoke with the public relations officer of the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association, IPMAN, and he explained to me yesterday night that Port Harcourt might not experience this because there are particular depots that are regulated by the government, and these particular depots right now do not have products. And so people have to rely on private depots, more like tank farms, and Port Harcourt has enough of that. And at the moment, there's enough product. But there might be the scenario we are seeing in other states in Port Harcourt if the neighboring states start coming here to buy product and then they run out of stock. Because basically, if you have fewer tank farms or private depots in a particular state, there are tendency for there to be scarcity when the depots that are regulated by government do not have products. So that's what exactly it is. But for now, it's stable. NMPC sells for 591 naira. Other filling stations, well, slight 10 naira difference in what they used to sell before. Before now, last week it was selling between around 650 to 690. But yesterday, almost all the filling stations adjusted their pricing to 700 naira per liter. So that is what it is for now. So almost everywhere I checked this morning, they're all selling 700 naira. So that's what it is in Port Harcourt at this time. So we're lucky. There is no fuel scarcity in Port Harcourt for now.
Well, and we can see that rest on your face, Deborah. Thank you so much for your reporting. And it's also interesting to note that the adjustment in price, despite the fact that there is no petrol scarcity in your state. Thank you so much, Deborah, our correspondent.
Okay. Well, for that adjustment, the public relations officer, Ipman, explained that because it's not sold by the depot regulated, you're going to likely see little adjustments. And for now, the fewer the tank farms have products, the more the price will go up. Of course, you know what happens in monopoly. When someone sees that maybe I'm the only one having products, it will definitely take his price up. So for now, the tank farms all have products. So there is no more like a monopoly enjoyed by any of them. But if neighboring states keep coming here to buy products, eventually you might have a situation where one or two might have, and that can actually trigger a price increment. Well, that's what it is. So for now, it's stable, but we don't know what will happen the next one day. That's what it is. Yeah.
Well, Deborah, it looks like you're just taunting all of us in Lagos and Abuja and trying to show off with the situation in Rivers State. But it's expected because, of course, that's the one that lays the golden eggs. But tell us about the situation with other filling stations around. You've given us the template. NNPC stations selling for 591. Others selling for 700. That's 109 naira difference. But surely there will be other filling stations that are probably locked, that are not selling petrol. Do you have that case there, and what is perhaps responsible?
Well, in Port Harcourt, actually, because I went out a bit early, so I don't know whether their start-off time is 8 a.m., but there are some I noticed that are closed, but I can't really there. So I can't really tell whether it's because they don't have products or because they open at 8 a.m. As when I went there, it was before 8 a.m. So perhaps I'll check again to know the situation, whether they are still locked and if it's because they don't have products. So that's what it is.
Thank you so much. We can see you're balling in Rivers State. We understand.
We'll come and get petrol from there.
Come and get petrol from there.
Well, it's expected because I don't have to keep for fuel like you guys are doing right now in Lagos. So.
Enjoy the good life.
Shots fired.
All right.
Well, Deborah having fun there.
Yeah, so let's get back to Mr. Shomi. Mr. Shomi, of course, you have a picture of what's going on in Rivers State. It looks like Rivers is out of Nigeria. Good for them. We hope that it gets to Lagos at some point. But I wanted you on that pricing policy. Let's move from percentage increase to now we're hearing in Port Harcourt 591 or so, as against 700 for other marketers. In Lagos, I bought for 720 at a particular fuel station. Some people are buying for 800. I know you've raised this conversation about they shouldn't be brutal and make everybody suffer because they want a marginal or some significant increase, in the price of petrol. Where exactly, in terms of figure, from your knowledge, are they talking about? Are we going to start living with the reality of the average we used to see of 610 to 640, that's not an NMPC? Are we talking about 700 and above now for a liter of fuel?
Honestly, I don't know. So if I'm going to speak definitively, it will be guesswork. But I think what is more important is that there should be more details in the public. You know, and educated people are easier to lead and more difficult to drive. And what sometimes people miss is the fact that if there is intelligent discussions about the need for an increase, people can live with it. I mean, it's not the first time, second time, nor will it be the last time that there will be a demand for fuel increase price in Nigeria. It is just usually the way we go about these things. So specifically responding to your question again, I'm not in a position to provide figures. We can only modulate or analyze or provide extensions from the apparent increase in the international price for crude. But why that is not a good benchmark is that the moment there is a decrease in price for crude, it will not necessarily lead to a decrease in price for the finished product. So somehow there has to be a more intelligent way of doing this price increase thing.
Right, and
yeah,
it's a great point you made there. There has to be a more intelligent way to approach these things. I mean, you can't take Nigerians for granted and just think, oh, we're doing it the same way. We'll do it again and then it will work. But we'd like to thank you so much, Mr. Olabode Shomi. I do hope that we're taking a cue from this as a people and as a government. We should do things the right way. Thank you so much for your time and your expert knowledge. We hope you have petrol for the course of a day. And thank you for your time, Mr. Shomi. Oh, there you go. Okay. Well, we'll take a moment now on the show. We're still going to keep asking those questions to get the government and those responsible to speak the truth. But when we return, there's this man who's gone from headmaster to head coach. Oh, yeah, I had to use that. Stay with us right here on The Morning Brief. That's our next talking point.